A lot went down the other day. Venezuela had an election and Maduro won again. And now what's interesting about this is when corporate media first started reporting this, they said that Maduro and his opposition both claimed that they won the election. So you had both sides saying that they were the ones that won. In the end, the results revealed that Maduro won. But I want to start off with the way that CNN, corporate media in particular, were covering this. You have to understand what someone like Maduro means to the West, and especially according to the U.S. government, and what this is really all about. This is not just about Maduro. This is also about resources. And this is about anyone that is against U.S. intervention. And then it also, Israel is mixed in with this as well. There's a lot going on here. Let's start off by breaking it down. That first announcement here, when they said that both sides were saying that they won.
Now we are continuing to monitor the situation in Venezuela, where authoritarian President Nicolas Maduro has been declared the winner of Sunday's election. That's according to the country's National Electoral Council. Maduro suggested there would be bloodshed if he lost, but shifted his rhetoric after being declared the winner.
Lo dije.
I said it. There was peace before, and there was during, and we have it. And there will be peace, stability, and justice after the 28th of July, starting from today. Peace, justice, respect of the law, and justice.
Well, Maduro's main challenger was opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia, a former diplomat who the coalition rallied behind after their two preferred candidates were barred from running. Speaking in Tokyo, moments after the result was announced, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called on the electoral authorities to ensure transparency and accountability.
We've seen the announcement just a short while ago by the Venezuelan Electoral Commission. We have serious concerns that the result announced does not reflect the will or the votes of the Venezuelan people.
Let me go ahead and correct that. What he really means to say is that it doesn't respect the will of the U.S. government. This is Antony Blinken here. The U.S. government is not happy with the results of the Venezuela election. And this is just another example of the U.S. government, again, trying to determine and intervene in another country's election. And this is not the first time. So here we are again, where the same country that accuses Russia and China of trying to meddle in their elections has absolutely no problem meddling in other countries' elections. Now, I am going to break this down to you and explain to you why what he is saying about the results of the election and the U.S. government not believing it is BS, because there have been multiple independent journalists on the ground in Venezuela covering this election. And what they have told me is that Venezuela's elections are actually one of the most secure elections that we have in the world. It is more secure than U.S. elections, right? So, of course, Antony Blinken is going to lean that out. And this is why it's important that you follow these independent journalists. Make sure you follow people like Anya Parampil, who wrote an entire book called Corporate Coup about her time in Venezuela and what was done there during that time. She has been there. She has covered this information. Make sure you follow people like Ronnie Akalik, who is also in Venezuela right now covering these elections. And also Professor Morandi is also talking about this, has been on the ground as well. So there are a number of people that have been there on the ground, and their reporting is a lot different from mainstream media.
It's critical that every vote be counted fairly and transparently, that election officials immediately share information with the opposition and independent observers without delay, and that the electoral authorities publish the detailed tabulation of votes. The international community is watching this very closely and will respond accordingly.
And there it is, right? The international community is watching this very closely, more so the U.S. government. Now, Antony Blinken is big mad, folks. Antony is big mad. Professor Morandi tweeted this, and I want to show you guys this as well. I am currently in Venezuela, Every single international election observer that I have spoken with has stated that the presidential election was fully transparent and that the declared result is completely accurate. And you can see the results here from Camilla. You should follow her as well on Twitter, Camilla, at Camilla Press. Breaking, Nicolas Maduro. So he has over 5.1 million votes, 51.2%. And Edmundo Gonzalez had 44.2%. So you have 51.2% and 44.2%. It's not even close. Okay. Okay. That was at 80% of tables counted, 59% turnout. So these are the people that were actually there. Now, the U.S. government may not like the fact that Maduro has won. You yourself may not be fond of Maduro, but that doesn't mean you get to lie about what happened at that election, about the results, and then also try to implement a coup because you are unhappy that the leader that you wanted to win did not win. The U.S. government is notorious for doing this. Now we go on for more here. And I believe I also do have this from, yes, Anya's coming up after, Ronnie is coming up after this. Anya Parampil, I suggest you follow her as well. When it comes to Venezuela, again, she wrote a book. The book has been published. I think she was on a book tour recently called Corporate Coup. It is about the coups in Venezuela. She was there on the ground. I heavily recommend that when it comes to this topic, that you follow her for this information, because again, this is someone who researched this for years in person. I want you to see what she said. Don't turn off your critical thinking skills just because you have been told Venezuela is socialist your whole life. The Venezuelan opposition have claimed fraud and contested virtually every election that they have lost since Chavez came to power. Yet they can never provide evidence. And that is because Venezuela's electoral process is far more secure than what we have in the United States. I describe the voting process in the country, which I have observed firsthand in my book, Corporate Coup. And by the way, I interviewed Anya about that book, I believe a couple of months ago. It was right before it was published. So you can search for that on my channel where she talks about her experience in Venezuela. Now listen to this. In Venezuela, voting machines were activated through a two-step verification process consisting a physical check of the voter's national identity card and a digital scan of their fingerprint. After casting their vote, the voter received a physical receipt of their ballot, which they can personally drop in a secure box on site. The voter then signed their name and stamped their thumbprint on a physical electoral registry to certify their participation. When polls closed, authorities assuaged fears of digital vote tampering by checking their final electronic tally against random sampling of 54% of the physical ballot receipts submitted by voters at polling stations. Citizen and international observers are present throughout this process. So does everybody hear that? Citizens and international observers. Do not fall for claims of fraud unless hard evidence is produced, especially because further escalation in Venezuela will only result in civil conflict and perhaps even a regional war in the Western Hemisphere. You think our border looks bad now? Wait until Washington turns up the heat on Caracas. Oh, and the Russian military has strong military ties with Venezuela and a presence within the country. We are not only talking about regional war here, but an expansion of the world war currently raging against Russia and its allied rising powers. Are you ready for that war to hit Washington's backyard? This is something I think people really need to think about before we even get to the coup part. This is very important. So this piece here, where Anya explains the migration. So a lot of people have been complaining about the border issue. A lot of people have been complaining. They said, well, there's migrants coming from different countries and all this kind of stuff. One of the things that Anya really has broken down, at least on this show, is that you have to understand why they're coming here in the first place. So if you're looking at the U.S. government implementing more sanctions on Venezuela, which is possible, I could see them doing that. Sanctions ruin your country economically. They really hurt the country. So if your country is ruined economically, they're destroying your country. What are you going to do? You are going to leave. And the hits are coming from the United States. Now, interestingly enough, the sanctions that the U.S. government put on Russia have not seemed to work. Russia has been able to beat those. Venezuela has had to deal with this for years. So this is why I always say it's important that you connect domestic policy to foreign policy. So if it angers you that there are migrants coming across the border, you have to take a step back and look and see, why are they coming here? What is happening? So here we go again. So this is what Anya is trying to warn you about. Let's get to the socialism piece here, which I also think is important. One more point. The vast majority of Venezuela's economy, hotels, restaurants, stores are privately owned and operated. Venezuela's socialism is largely defined by the fact its industries, including its oil sector and precious mineral reserves, are nationally operated. This makes Venezuela comparable to Russia and many other modern states that consider the natural resources stored within the nation to be the property of the republic rather than a few at the top. Now, why would the U.S. have an issue with the oil? I have said this multiple times before. If you look at the countries that the U.S. tends to target, I'm willing to bet you there's probably some resources there in that country that the U.S. wants that they're not able to have. Venezuela is an obsession in Washington because before Chavez, U.S. and European companies practically owned the country, and the IMF set its domestic economic agenda. Venezuela is home to the largest oil and untapped gold reserves in the world. This is why Americans have been inundated with propaganda about Venezuela since it began the process of asserting sovereign ownership over that natural wealth. That is what their socialism is primarily about. So shout out to Anya here for this. Like I said, again, go to the people who have been there that are very much aware of what's happening in Venezuela. But you guys see where this is going? Again, oil, resources. Now, Rania Khalek was there covering the elections, and we're going to dive into the part about the opposition, because what corporate media, again, is also probably not going to make clear to you is that the opposition is on Israel's side. So we're connecting different pieces here. Venezuela, the United States, Russia, and now we're also bringing in Israel to the mix as well. So shout out to Rania Khalek for this. One, this is a threat. Let's be clear about which side you are on if you oppose Venezuela's elected government. Israel's side. I'm getting angry responses to my Venezuela reporting from people who purport to be pro-Palestine, yet repeat lies about Venezuela promoted by the same media justifying genocide on Gaza. And this is an educational handicap I think that we need to fix, right? Because I'm noticing it too. Some of the same people that are pro-Palestine, they get that right. They get Gaza right, but they're getting other things wrong. Other things wrong. So shout out to Rania for calling that out, because this does need to be said. You are still believing the lies that are told to you by corporate media. And that is the same media that's been lying to you about what's happening in Gaza. They've been lying to you to protect Israel. And a lot of people are falling for that. Don't fall for that. So if you get Gaza right, that's great. But then I want you to make the connection to other countries as well. Let's go on. Venezuela opposition leader Marina Corina Machado, who is currently behind the violent coup attempt, loves Israel. In 2018, she wrote a letter to Israel's Netanyahu begging him to launch a military intervention against her country's socialist government. This woman right here, this is what the West wanted. Do people see this? This is what the US government wanted. Again, she is on Israel's side. So it's not just Maduro. Everybody wants to just say, oh, it's Maduro. He's a dictator. Da, da, da. No, there are a lot of moving pieces here. So it goes on to say, let's go down to this video. Here is Venezuela's US-backed opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, promising to reestablish the Venezuelan embassy in occupied Jerusalem. So let's hear this video here. And this is what I wanted to show people. You have to get all the pieces.
Thank you, and we'll stay in touch. And I promise we one day we'll have a close relationship between Venezuela and Israel. And I believe, and I can announce this, that our government will move our Israeli embassy to Jerusalem. That will be part of our support to the state of Israel.
Wow, in God's will. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So there you go. They want to move the embassy. So you see, again, to Rania's point, if you support the opposition, you're actually on Israel's side. That's what Israel wants. And the US government wants what Israel wants. So you see how this all goes together? There's more. In 2020, Maria Corina Machado signed a cooperation agreement with Israel's Netanyahu-led Likud party on political, ideological, and social issues, as well as advancing on issues related to strategy, geopolitics, and security. The same Netanyahu carrying out the genocide in Gaza. So she is aligned with the Likud party. So this is what people are supporting. And here's that piece of information here. Start here. The Foreign Relations Division of the Likud Party, represented by Eli Vered-Hazen, and the Vente Venezuelan Party, represented by Maria Corina Machado, undertake to forge an alliance between our two parties to cooperate on political, ideological, and social matters, as well as advancing cooperation on issues related to strategy, geopolitics, and security, among others, in order to create an operational partnership. So by Maduro winning, it's not just a lost cause for Israel. It's also a lost cause for the US government, because the US government said that their interests align with Israel. So we always got to make sure we follow all of these cues here. We make sure we follow the dots. And here's another one. Look at this. Here is Venezuela's opposition leader, Maria, thanking Israel for recognizing the attempted US-backed coup leader, Juan Guaidó. So listen to this. So Rania brought hella receipts.
On behalf of the people of Venezuela, I would like to thank Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, for his recognition of Juan Guaidó as the interim president of Venezuela. Prime Minister Netanyahu joins our many allies in the hemisphere and the world in welcoming Venezuela back to the bloc of Western democratic nations that oppose despot and oppression. We certainly have a common enemy with Israel, the criminal forces that undermine freedom and peace in the world. Venezuela was one of the nations that back in 1947 in the General Assembly of the United Nations supported Resolution 181 that led to the creation of the State of Israel in 1948. Since then, we had good and strong diplomatic relations. That's why we, the Venezuelan people, look forward to the reestablishment of the diplomatic relations with the State of Israel. I want to reaffirm the valuable contribution the Jewish community has given to the development of Venezuela through decades. And even though many have been forced to leave our country, we want and expect that they come back to rebuild our nation. Venezuela's reconstruction will require strong support and involvement in areas such as medicine, security, rural development, and technology, where Israel can be a genuine partner. I want to express how meaningful it was for the Venezuelan people that this recognition to the genuine government of Venezuela came precisely the day of Holocaust recognition. I myself look forward to visit the State of Israel as soon as we conquer freedom.
So everybody see a recurring theme here? All roads lead back to Israel and the US government. Recurring theme. So shout out to Rania, one more as well. This is another thing people need to understand. Maduro actually supports Palestine. Rania puts here, meanwhile, Maduro loves Palestine. If Maduro was unseated, this is coming from Alan McLeod. If Maduro was unseated in July, some of the loudest applause will come from Tel Aviv. The bus driver turned politician has proven to be one of the staunchest international critics of Israel and supporters of Palestine. Israel is committing massacres in the Gaza Strip in front of the world's eyes without anyone deterring it, claiming that Israel's actions constitute some of the worst barbarity seen since the days of Hitler. Maduro went on to condemn the European Union as accomplices in genocide. Despite its own problematic economic situation, Venezuela has sent tons of aid to Gaza. Everybody hear this? That includes food, oil, drinking water, medical supplies, water pumps, and mattresses. So again, supporting Gaza, supporting the Palestinian cause. Even the president of Mexico has something to say about all of this. So we're going to go ahead and bring him in. We're bringing in AMLO, and he wants to know, why is the Organization of American States meddling in Venezuelan elections? Listen to this.
Que respeten. Ahí está. ¿Qué se tiene que meter la OEA? ¿Qué se tienen que meter? O sea, eso es injerencismo. Por eso la OEA no tiene credibilidad.
So he's saying the Americas don't have any credibility.
¿Con qué fundamento la OEA?
Under what basis does the OAS claim the other candidate won?
Tiene que ganó el otro candidato. Que respete.
So again, that's AMLO. President of Mexico, again, calling out the US government. Why are you meddling here? So all of that happened. And then there was a coup attempt. Now we're going to follow Alan for this one as well. There is an attempted coup. There's an attempted coup d'etat underway here in Venezuela as the US-backed opposition is trying to overturn yesterday's election results. It's wild, fam.
There is no doubt that an attempted coup d'etat is underway here in Venezuela. The only question is, how successful will it be? Yesterday, less than 24 hours ago, President Nicolas Maduro won the 2024 Venezuelan elections. He gained 51% of the vote. His closest challenger, Edmundo Gonzalez, won 44%. The results were immediately ratified by several regional countries, including Bolivia, Nicaragua, Honduras, and Cuba. It was also endorsed by large countries like China and Russia. The United States, however, immediately cast aspersions on the events, saying that there were serious irregularities. Those words prompted Edmundo Gonzalez and his supporters to come out into the streets today and vent their fury. Many shops closed early or didn't open at all today, fearing the worst. In certain areas, it's very calm, it's very tranquil. In other areas, it's extremely tense. And in still more, we see thousands of people out on the streets, burning tires, setting fire to different things, even attacking police officers. Nicolas Maduro has warned that the opposition plans a bloodbath and that this could turn into something of a civil war. Mint Press will keep you updated from Caracas as events transpire.
So everybody remember this. And again, if you think about who is calling for peace and who's actually committing the violence, you know, you can see that a lot of times the opposition here that was basically trying to make it seem like, well, Maduro is not going to be peaceful, etc. But you do have the opposition pushing that violence into the streets. And then Maduro also called this out as well. He said, I'm getting a video here of the burning of PSUV's headquarters in Calabozo. This is very typical of what they call color revolutions designed by the Americans. It's a script. Listen to this.
Me está llegando una imagen acá de la quema de la casa de el PSUV en Calabozo. Aquí está, en Calabozo, por aquí, ¿no? Vamos a ponerlo otra vez. Grupo de delincuentes. Vamos por todos ustedes, tengan la seguridad. Cuando yo digo algo, lo hago, lo hacemos. Igualmente han procedido a quemar alcaldías, a atacar sedes del poder público. Esto es muy típico, Diosdado, de lo que llaman la revolución de los colores, que diseñan los gringos. Es un guión, correcto, es un guión.
So again, he acknowledges that it's a script. It's the same playbook.
Que ellos pretenden traer a Venezuela. Tranca de calles, autopistas, quemas, ponen cauchos, queman. Y la mayoría de esta gente drogada y armada.
Corey, we can go ahead and go to part 2 for a tight VNC. So everybody sees what's happening like instantly, because the person that won that they didn't want to win, all of a sudden is just, it's wild. It's crazy. We're definitely going to be keeping an eye on Venezuela to make sure things don't continue to escalate, because this is not good. We have too much going on at the same time internationally. You have the war with Russia and Ukraine. You have Israel is still bombing kids in Gaza. I just talked about the school that was just bombed. On Sunday, there was another school that was bombed. More Palestinian kids have been killed. I just saw a headline earlier before I went live that said that Israel has now bombed Beirut. Like, it's crazy. There's conflict in the Middle East. There's conflict with Russia and Ukraine. Now you have craziness happening in Venezuela. And again, I just want to tell people, a lot of times, a lot of this is prompted by the U.S. government. The U.S. government pushes. They push these coups. The coup in Venezuela, that was the U.S. government. This has happened multiple times. The U.S. government tries to be the world's police. And as soon as these countries decide that they don't want to do business with the West anymore because of the way that the U.S. has been, and they decide they want to collaborate with other countries, all of a sudden they're evil. Because they decide they want to join BRICS, because they want to work with other countries. They want a multipolar world. They don't want to be dominated by the U.S. government that has really been policing the world. And it's a problem. And so for all the people who are coming out saying, oh, but he's a dictator, da, 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 and all that kind of stuff, that's not our space. That's not our place. It's not our place to tell another country who their leader should be. It's not our place to tell another country who they should be voting for. Don't we criticize other countries and accuse them for meddling in our elections? But it's okay for the US government to tell every other country who should be in charge of their country and do their bidding? I'm against US intervention. We should not be involved with these countries. Leave these countries alone and let them govern themselves. I really believe a lot of these countries would be better off today had it not been for US intervention. I really do believe that.